Imagine a prison so dangerous that guards refuse to enter certain blocks. A place where cartel bosses live like kings, assassins rule the hallways, and escape tunnels run deeper than the foundations themselves. These are the prisons the world fears, the ones cartels turned into their own kingdoms. Tonight, we step inside the world's most dangerous cartel prisons, and what you're about to see will blur the line between inmate and ruler. The rise of the cartel prison state, 500+ characters. Long before the world heard names like El Chapo, Los Zetas, or CJNG, Latin America's prison systems were already overwhelmed by corruption, violence, and overcrowding. But what no one predicted, not politicians, not law enforcement, not prison officials, was that these same prisons would one day evolve into the headquarters of some of the most violent criminal organizations on earth. Cartel prisons weren't built. They were created, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. To understand how this happened, you have to understand one crucial truth about cartel power. They don't just operate outside the law. They operate above it. By the early 2000s, prison systems in Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and parts of South America were collapsing under the weight of mass arrests. Governments believed that by locking up cartel leaders and gang commanders, they were cutting the heads off the snake. Instead, they were building the snake its own fortress. Every year, more cartel members were arrested. Entire networks funneled into cramped cells. But rather than weakening these groups, the prisons acted as incubators. Rival gangs were separated. Leadership was concentrated. And with thousands of loyal foot soldiers inside, control became inevitable. In Mexico, the problem grew fastest. Prisons like Topo Chico, Puente Grande, Altamira, and Cerrizo No. 3 became infamous for riots, burned dormitories, and mass killings. But beneath that chaos, a more organized system was growing. Cartel leaders discovered they could run operations from behind bars just as effectively as on the outside. Why? Because the prison walls weren't barriers. They were bargaining chips. At Topo Chico, the Zetas and Gulf Cartel didn't fight for control of the yard. They fought for control of entire blocks. The Zetas controlled the kitchen, laundry, visitation area, and even controlled which inmates could sleep where. As long as guards stayed out of the way, or were paid to, the prison became a miniature kingdom. One investigator put it perfectly. Topo Chico wasn't a prison. It was a city run by criminals. But Topo Chico was only the beginning. In Honduras, the MS-13 gang took over entire cell blocks in the Tamara and San Pedro Sula prisons. Prisoners built their own stores, restaurants, barbershops, and weapon manufacturing workshops. Guards guarded the walls, but inside the gangs governed themselves. In Venezuela, the situation went even further. Prison prans, inmate warlords, ran everything inside the walls. In Tocaron prison, the leader built a nightclub, a swimming pool, a small zoo, gambling rooms, restaurants, a professional gym. Meanwhile, guards never stepped foot inside the main inmate areas. They stood at the perimeters, watching the chaos unfold like spectators of a city they no longer controlled. Cartel and gang prisons became ecosystems, violent, structured, profitable ecosystems. And they all shared the same pattern. The government controlled the outside. The cartel controlled the inside. But nowhere was cartel prison power more infamous than in the jails that held Sinaloa cartel leaders. These prisons were supposed to be the most secure in Mexico, and yet corruption was so deep that inmates built tunnels, bribed staff, and lived in conditions closer to luxury than incarceration. When Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was taken to Puente Grande, he didn't enter as a prisoner, he entered as royalty. Guards brought him meals from outside restaurants. Female staff members were smuggled in for private visits. He held meetings with lieutenants like a CEO in a conference room. It became such a joke that inmates called Puente Grande La Disneylandia, Disneyland. But the most shocking part wasn't the food, the meetings, or even the freedom of movement. It was how he escaped. In 2001, after years of bribing prison staff, El Chapo ordered a guard to roll him out of the facility, inside a laundry cart. Guards opened every door, waved him through, and let him drive off in a prison laundry truck. No alarms. No resistance. Not even a report filed until hours later. This escape didn't expose corruption. It exposed the truth. Cartel prisons were owned by cartels, not by governments. As the years passed, Latin American prisons transformed into hybrid war zones. Part fortress, part criminal headquarters, part training ground, part torture chamber. Some prisons held mass executions orchestrated by inmates. Others ran kidnapping operations from inside their walls. Some even launched coordinated attacks outside the prison, using contraband cell phones, corrupt guards, and loyal soldiers. Governments tried to crack down. But every crackdown only concentrated more leaders into fewer prisons, giving them even more power. This is how cartel prisons were born. Not through design but through collapse. And what emerged inside those walls is more shocking than any fiction. Inside the cartel kingdoms, prisons the gangs themselves control for 500+ characters. To understand the true power of cartel prisons, you must forget everything you think you know about incarceration. Forget the image of uniformed guards patrolling tiers. Forget the idea of locked cells and fixed schedules. Forget control. Because in the world's most dangerous cartel prisons, guards don't control inmates. Inmates control guards. In fact, in many cases, the guards don't even step inside. Welcome to a world where cartel leaders rule like presidents, prison blocks operate like sovereign nations, and anyone, guard or inmate, who challenges the system is eliminated without hesitation. This is not exaggeration. This is documented reality. The cartel regime: you enter on your feet, you leave in a bag. Cartel prisons operate on a simple principle. Inside these walls, we decide who lives and who dies. The power structure is usually built around one dominant group. Sinaloa Cartel, in parts of Mexico. Los Zetas, across northern and eastern Mexico. Gulf Cartel, in Tamaulipas. MS-13, across Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala. Barrio 18, rivals of MS-13. PRANs, prison warlords in Venezuela. PCC, Primeiro Comando de Capital in Brazil. CV, Comando Vermelho also in Brazil. Whichever group holds majority control becomes the government of that prison. Yes, a government. They collect taxes. They run courts. They carry out executions. They manage budgets. They operate businesses. They control the guards. Prison becomes a city-state, violent, functional, and terrifying. Let's step inside several of them. Tocaron Prison, Venezuela, a criminal city within a prison. Before it was finally raided in 2023, Tocaron Prison was considered the most unbelievable cartel-controlled prison on earth. The PRAN, inmate warlord, ran Tocaron like a private empire. Inside those walls stood a nightclub called Tocaron Disco, a swimming pool with cabanas, a professional baseball field, a mini zoo with exotic animals, restaurants serving steak and rum, gambling halls, barbershops, tattoo parlors, stores selling electronics, condoms, liquor, weapons. Prisoners had wives, girlfriends, even entire families living inside the prison, in small neighborhoods known as La Pequeña Habana, Little Havana. Guards stayed outside the inner perimeter. If they stepped in, they would be killed. This was not a prison. It was a criminal economy running 24/7. The PRAN taxed every business. He commanded armed soldiers. He ordered kidnappings. He ran extortion networks across Venezuela. He held meetings with gang leaders using cell phones and satellite communications. And at the center of it all? A single prisoner who ruled more territory than some politicians. Topo Chico Prison, Mexico, the most violent prison in North America. When journalists entered Topo Chico after a 2016 riot, what they found shocked even hardened investigators. Inside the prison were luxury suites for cartel bosses, air-conditioned rooms, large flat-screen TVs, mini fridges stocked with beer, shrines dedicated to Santa Muerte, a fully functional bakery, restaurants serving tacos and seafood, stacks of cash used for gambling, narcotics labs, and dozens of handcrafted weapons. But even more disturbing, cartel leaders operated torture chambers inside the prison. Cells converted into punishment rooms. Walls stained with old blood. Hooks mounted from ceilings. Soundproofing made of blankets and mattresses. Everything designed to teach lessons to inmates who broke cartel rules. The guards? They did nothing. Because the Zetas owned the prison. One high-ranking officer admitted anonymously, "We lost control years ago. We only guard the front gate. Inside they have their own world." Topo Chico wasn't an anomaly, it was a model replicated across the region. Mariona Prison, El Salvador, run by M13 and Barrio 18. In El Salvador, mass arrests of gang members in the early 2000s led to an explosion of gang-controlled prisons. Authorities believed separating MS-13 and Barrio 18 would reduce violence. Instead, it strengthened them. Each prison became a recruitment center, a training academy, a bank for extortion funds, a communications hub, a command center for attacks. Inside Mariona, M13 ran their own courts, taxes, la renta, smuggling systems, Construction projects. Shops. Weapons were handcrafted. Shanks, spears, clubs, chains, flamethrowers made from cleaning chemicals. Gang leaders gave orders for murders outside the prison via smuggled cell phones. Some Kingspin members used lawyers and visitors to pass messages. El Salvador eventually responded with mega-prisons and extreme crackdowns, but for nearly 2 decades gangs ruled from behind bars. La Picota Prison, Colombia. The Cartel Penthouse. Colombia's La Picota prison famously held drug lords who lived like businessmen, not inmates. Investigations revealed private chefs, unlimited phones, wine, cocaine, prostitutes, conference rooms for cartel meetings, bribed guards who acted as personal assistants. And the most shocking part? Several drug lords continued to run trafficking operations directly from inside La Picota, exporting cocaine, negotiating deals, and issuing orders to assassins. One DA agent described the place as a corporate headquarters with bars on the windows. Carandiru, Brazil, where cartels become armies. Before it was demolished, Carandiru was one of the most dangerous prisons in the world. It housed thousands of inmates from Brazil's biggest criminal factions. PCC. Commando Vermelho. Amigos dos Amigos. Inside Carandiru. Hit squads executed enemies. Cartels recruited teens visiting relatives. Weapons were stockpiled. Factions held mass gatherings. When the government tried to regain control, riots erupted, leading to the infamous 1992 massacre where 111 prisoners were killed. Carandiru didn't break the cartels. It forged them. The shadow economy, how cartels make millions from prison. Inside cartel prisons, money flows freely. Extortion, called rent, is the backbone. Families must pay to visit. Inmates must pay to sleep in safer areas. Businesses inside prison pay taxes. Phones, drugs, and weapons cost triple outside value. Cartel prisons generate millions per year. And the profits don't stay inside. They fund assassinations, drug shipments, bribes, real estate investments, weapons for soldiers outside. The prisons become part of the cartel's international financial machine. The reality, the prison is the headquarters. Cartel prisons are not where criminal empires go to die. They are where criminal empires go to grow. From inside these walls, cartel bosses run trafficking routes, issue kill orders, coordinate kidnappings, manage finances, recruit soldiers, communicate with leaders abroad. Imprisonment doesn't stop their operations. It secures them. Because behind bars they are protected from rival cartels, assassins, law enforcement raids, military attacks, political instability. Prisons become fortresses for criminals. Daily life in hell. Inside the violence, law, and order of cartel-controlled prisons for 500-plus characters. To understand the reality of cartel prisons, you must step inside as the sun rises, before the guards open the outer gates, before the kitchens fire up, before the noise begins. Dawn in a cartel prison is not quiet. It is tense. Inmates are already awake. Many never sleep properly because in a prison controlled by cartels rather than the state, danger does not sleep. Every sound could be a warning. A whispered command, a footstep in the hallway, a blade being sharpened in the dark. Prison is supposed to be predictable. Cartel prisons are anything but. This is daily life inside the world's most dangerous inmate kingdoms. The morning, checkpoints, controlled by inmates. In most prisons, guards perform morning head counts. In cartel prisons, the cartels perform them first. The dominant group, Sinaloa, Zetas, MS-13, PCC, or the Venezuelan PRANs, sends soldiers through the dormitories. Their job is to verify who arrived overnight, who paid protection, who owes debts, who is hiding, who might be a snitch. Debts are not forgiven. Protection isn't optional. Every inmate has a price, and if they can't pay, they join the cartel or they die. In some places, prisoners line up against walls with their hands behind their heads as gang leaders walk through with notebooks, collecting the daily tax. Families on the outside must send money or food. If they fail even once, the consequences are brutal. In Honduras' San Pedro Sula prison, before its closure, MS-13 literally used receipts like a business. One receipt meant the inmate had paid their rent for the week. No receipt? You were fair game. These aren't prisons. They are criminal economies. The internal justice system, faster, deadlier, and final. Cartel prisons do not rely on state law. They rely on cartel law. When a conflict arises, the gang leadership holds a trial. Trials last minutes, sometimes seconds. Evidence is rarely needed, just accusations from high-ranking members. Punishments include beatings, stabbings, forced labor, isolation, or execution. Executions are often public. In Topo Chico, prisoners were murdered in broad daylight in the central courtyard. Their bodies were left for hours to show dominance. In El Salvador, MS-13 created punishment cells, where inmates were tortured for breaking gang rules, not prison rules. The most feared punishment? El Pozo, the hole. A cell with no light, no mattress, barely enough oxygen, sometimes filled with water or human waste. Inmates who emerge from the hole are never the same again. In some Venezuelan prisons, crans held executions during mealtimes as a warning. Prisoners ate in silence while bodies were dragged past. There is no appeal process, no second chance, no negotiations. In cartel prisons, justice is instant and fatal. The economy, a prison run like a city. Cartel-controlled prisons run their own internal industries. Every prison is different, but common businesses include restaurants, barbershops, cell phone charging stations, tattoo parlors, gambling dens, drug markets, cocaine, meth, marijuana, pills, weapon fabrication shops, protection services, medical clinics run by inmates, all paid for in prepaid phone cards, drugs, or family deposits sent from the outside. In Tocaron prison, inmates ran a full nightclub. Women from outside came in during parties. Alcohol flowed freely. Music blasted. The Justice Ministry had no control, they simply guarded the exterior fence. In Brazil, PCC prisons run like corporations. They keep financial records. Each inmate is required to contribute a percentage of all money earned. The profits fund weapons, bribes, legal defense, prison improvements, outside operations. Cartel prisons aren't chaotic jungles. They are structured ecosystems, designed to make money. The routine of a cartel boss, comfort in a cage. Not everyone lives in fear. High-ranking cartel leaders often live in private cells, VIP rooms with air conditioning, rooms with beds, TVs, refrigerators, access to cell phones, daily meals from outside restaurants, priority medical care, visits from mistresses or girlfriends, bodyguards, yes, inmate bodyguards. When authorities raided Topo Chico, they found jacuzzis, PlayStation consoles, luxury mattresses, expensive sneakers, thousands of dollars in cash, personal shrines to narco saints. At La Picota in Colombia, one drug lord had a soundproof music studio inside his cell. Others hosted meetings with lieutenants as if conducting boardroom discussions. Behind bars, these men live better than many people on the outside. The routine of a low-rank inmate: fear, slavery, and silence. But for the average inmate, life is brutal. Low-level prisoners often sleep on concrete, pay for water access, work for cartels, cooking, cleaning, smuggling, crafting weapons, serve as lookouts, run messages between gang leaders, are punished for mistakes with violence. Some become victims of extortion. Others become forced labor. Some become execution tools. In Venezuelan prisons, new inmates are often greeted with a choice: join the PRAN or suffer the consequences. Those who refuse become peones, pawns. They cook, clean, haul supplies, and perform dirty work. Abuse is constant. Death is common. The violence, always waiting, always close. Daily life includes a background hum of violence. Fights break out over debts. New inmates are tested. Sexual violence occurs in hidden corners. Guards ignore screams. Cartel soldiers raid rival blocks. Machetes and homemade guns appear without warning. Homicides are frequent. Disappearances are common. Bodies are found in water tanks, trash containers, and hidden tunnels. In some prisons, death is not surprising. Survival is. The role of guards, the perimeter, not the prison. Cartel prisons invert the roles of authority. Guards often remain outside the main inmate compound, collect bribes, smuggle drugs and phones, look the other way during violence, maintain only the perimeter fences. In some facilities, guards are too afraid to enter. In others, guards are cartel employees in uniform. A prison without control is a war zone. A prison with cartel control is something worse. Organized chaos. The hope, none. In many cartel prisons, inmates do not dream of release. They dream of survival. Some prisoners accept their fate. Some join the cartel to gain protection. Some lose their sanity. Some try to escape and are found days later, tortured beyond recognition. There are no rehabilitation programs. No therapy sessions. No educational opportunities. Cartel prisons are not meant to reform. They are meant to rule. A dark truth behind the walls. Cartel prisons are not facilities where justice is served. They are kingdoms, ruthless and profitable. Behind their walls, cartels grow stronger. Violence evolves. Criminal networks operate freely. Death is routine. Corruption becomes culture. The world's most dangerous prisons are not dangerous because of their walls, but because of the men who run them from within. In these places, the government controls the entrance. The cartel controls everything else. And for the men trapped inside, there is no escape. Not from the violence. Not from the extortion. Not from the cartel's law. And certainly not from the world they helped create.